Hello, Internet. Once again, this is Kopitiam Council, and as always, but before that, Eid Mubarak to all of you, those who are celebrating, and happy holidays. Since we are recording this on Sunday, you're probably working tomorrow, so happy working tomorrow. I'm Haffisz, and today you are always with.
He is always with Adi, and just from my part, I want to wish everyone Selamat Hari Raya, Eid Mubarak, and to some of my Indian friends and Indian listeners, Happy Ugadi, Happy Vaisakhi, and Happy Tamil New Year.
Yeah. Uh, with that out of the way, as I mentioned, today is a 14th of April, Sunday. A lot of things going on in Middle East for the last 24 hours, and it's involving none other than country Israel, and another one of the not so surprised, not Palestine but Iran. What has been happening, Eddie, since the last 24 hours?
So unfortunately, we've seen a rise in escalation of tensions happening in the Middle East. The region, which has already been plagued with all kinds of conflicts, such as in Syria, in Palestine, in Yemen, in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula, and now it seems that Iran has finally tried to rear its head into this whole situation and has launched airstrikes into Israel, which most have been intercepted by the Iron Dome's defense system created by Israel. So we are seeing, I feel, is a new chapter in this situation, in this whole conflict, because this is quite unprecedented. Iran itself has never been one to take such decisive or very, how do you say, obvious action against Israel. Of course, the historical relationship has been quite rocky and very full of tension, but this is the first time Iran has acted out in such a way. So this is a new chapter, I would say, in the whole destabilization of the whole region. And of course, the American government isn't going to take this lying down, because they have always had that kind of standoffish attitude towards Iran for the longest time, ever since the revolution in 1979. And even since then, Iran, the government has always maintained a very anti Israeli stance, funding all kinds of groups in the region to counteract in Israel's influence. Like we can see Hezbollah, we can see the Houthis in Yemen. Now we can even say that parts of Hamas as well is being supported by Iran here. But now we're seeing Iran actually putting its foot at the door already.
Yeah, just some numbers from the attack last night. Retaliation, if you, according to the Iranian side, because this is not unprovoked, Ade, because this is what they call a retaliation from their embassy in Damascus was attacked. So embassy, as we know, is part of their sovereignty. Except it's not in Iran, but it's in Damascus, but that piece of land is considered their own soil. So on that basis, they said that this is a retaliation. That's why they're launching their attack from Iran. That's why this is the first time in many, many years that this has happened. So there were around 300 drones, suicide drones, the Shahid 146, if I'm not mistaken, were launched. And as you said, 99% was intercepted. There were 7 that was successfully landed on the military base, Adi. So what's so good about this whole thing is that they actually targeted a military base, not hospital, not schools, not public housing. So this is a real proper warfare, if you wanna call that. Another interesting thing also, Adi, that after the Iranian announced it that they are gonna stop doing this for the time being, unless there's another retaliation from Israel. These both sides claim victory, because for Israel part, they say like, hooray! There's so many attacks on hundreds of, including ballistic missiles, targeted to our soil, but 99% was intercepted. We are so good with our advanced military defense system. And on the other side, the Iranian as well, they said, we launched so many, even though, yes, majority of them were intercepted, but we successfully destroyed some of their facilities, military facilities. To be specific, the military base that was launching the target into their embassies in Damascus. So this is, if you cannot win the technical war, at least win the imaginary war that you can claim over this. So I think the way they reacted to this is very uh, I don't know, like it's some sort of like a game, because they know what it stakes and they know what they're doing. And I'm so relieved to know also the allies from both sides, including United States. Biden says that no more retaliations to this. Like we already mentioned to Iran that they should not retaliate to the attack in the embassy in Damascus, but to save face, Iranian had to do this. They didn't have any choice. Like if they did not retaliate in this manner, Iran would be seen weak, and secondly, like maybe another embassy will be attacked down the line. So they will never know if there's no such strong message being sent to Tel Aviv. So that's what I'm reading into this. What do you think?
Well, I know the Israel's finance minister Bezalel Smotrich did call for a more decisive response, retaliation as well, to go back at Iran for committing informal military attacks such as this. And I think you put it quite well when you said that this is a proper war when you attack military targets, because that the obvious way to launch an attack would be to cripple your enemy's military facilities so that they can not be able to retaliate so swiftly. But I think Iran itself will also have some countermeasures ready, just in case that Israel does decide to retaliate with what is happening here. But this also goes to show that what kind of maneuvers that Iran will be making, and this isn't the opening act. I think this is the interlude to the long-standing rivalry between Iran and Israel. Iran has successfully been able to co-opt several elements, like I mentioned before, around the region to pigeonhole. Pigeonhole Israel, but these are usually non-state elements. They've never been able to gain a foothold in establishing a cohesive alliance with the likes of Egypt, or Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Lebanon to actually pressure Israel. And that, I think, is a missing component when it comes to restabilizing the region here. It seems that Iran is more content with funding non-state actors or militant groups to be able to carry out what they need to do. But then again, Iran, in a way, is kind of like a pariah for a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, which I think Israel would kind of sense and would try to reestablish its connections with other countries that seems to have a tumultuous relationship with Iran. We could see that a reestablishment of relationship with Armenia or Azerbaijan, which has always been very wary of Iran. And definitely, I think Israel would call on this would be a just cause for Israel to call on its number one ally, which is America, to put even more pressures on Iran here. But this, like I say, it's an interlude. It would establish and redraw the line over who is going to take Iran's side here. I know here in Malaysia, with what is going on, the Prime Minister, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim, has called for a national council to deliberate on how to respond to this. And this would really cement, I mean, of course, the Prime Minister has already gone on record establishing Malaysia's direction here, Malaysia's stance, but to see that a formal action of aggression and violence from one country to another, because we see usually the conflict is Israel versus Hamas, which isn't fully recognized across the world, but we see a recognized country, Iran, declaring an open skirmish, or you can even say bombardment. And that would definitely set off a lot of alarm bells for a lot of the international community, because now this is transformed not just from the interstate or interregional level, but now it is not international level. And like I said, this would escalate all kinds of tensions. Now, we were talking about the other day the potential for a ceasefire. Now, with this is added into the mix, I think this would just inflame already existing tensions, and I think this would, slowly dismantle, or it would reintroduce an element that could sabotage a ceasefire, and because we would see that Israel is seeing that Iran is acting aggressively, and they are very much convinced that Hamas is also supported by Iran. So you put two and two together, you think Israel would now acquiesce to a ceasefire here. But that could just be me reading the tensions that are already there. But what about you, Hafiz? I mean, do you think this would put a dent in the ceasefire attempts?
Oh yeah, definitely, and I think this is deliberately being planned by Netanyahu as well, because we need to remember that prior to the attack in the Iran embassy in Damascus, there were also the exchanges of so-called assault, but these were done by proxies, whether Houthis or Hezbollah in Lebanon. So in that sense, Iran never attack directly from their soil, because they still see this is as a proxy war, so-called war. But after it was Israel unprovoked attack direct to their embassy. So this is some sort of like Iran was thinking like, hey, this could be a trap that want to drag us all into this mess and whatever, because they don't want. I think because they even give a lot of warning, and I think it was only this attack only happened after 2 weeks. The attack from Damascus. So this is a calculated risk move by Ayatollah Khamenei, so that they were thinking like, hey, if this is a trap, then we're gonna do really. It needs a surgery precisions. That's why the number, I think the number of drone that being released was, I think, just enough for them to rattle the Iron Dome, so that it will, give at least 1% of it to hit the target. Because I think if they bombard even more, I think it would confuse or weaken the Iron Dome anyway. Because for those who don't know, like Iron Dome also have its limited, even though it's one of the most advanced defense system in the world, but it has its limitation. So and I think Iran knows this, and they try to exploit, but they don't want to expose too much. So I think this is a very calculated. The number of missiles being released is a calculated one, and they do this precisely and just targeting the military base. So on that note, also Netanyahu provoking Iran here is so that they can drag US into this as well, because up until today, Biden is still trying to be the police, the world police here, talking to Netanyahu on one hand, selling more arms to them, but on the other hand as well, they were trying to talk sense to Netanyahu to de-escalate whatever happening in Gaza, try to open the border in Rafah, so, for example, and try to to negotiate ceasefire so that they can facilitate this with Hamas. So as you can see, U.S. playing a double role here, and to Netanyahu, this is something. If you want to call like a betrayal in terms of a partnership that Israel and US have ever since. So Netanyahu needs someone like maybe George Bush, who wants, yes, I'm all in. Do whatever you want. We will be behind you and back you 100%. So I think Netanyahu doesn't get this kind of support from Biden, because Biden also will be facing election towards the end of the year. So he also has some calculated risks that he needs to be. So he needs to play both sides, because remember, to appeal to these Democrats, mostly colored people, in example, for Muslim majority in Michigan as well. How are you going to win Michigan as one of the swing states? So this is going to be crucial for his election, for hopefully against Trump, that actually winning in a lot of swing states now. So the trend is not in favor for Biden. Then he needs to do something more than this. That's why we're seeing this. First, we see from United States abstaining from vetoing in UN. That's a surprise to all of us. And then Biden also talking sense to Netanyahu to de-escalate the war. This is another unlike US character before. So I think Netanyahu wants to drag Biden into this, and rightly so. Putin has also made an announcement that if US, even the slightest, involved in this, Russia will equal that. So I think it is far from World War III. I know some fanatics out there fantasizing World War III is coming, whatever. But I think it will cap to a regional warfare. Because the power of balance, the balance of power, it's not it cannot be claimed by anyone. No one can be 100% sure that we're gonna win this, because the last time World War happened, Nazi was so confident with the plan that the plan that they had, they could win the war. Now, China, Russia, US do not want to make the same mistake, because they know the balance of power is not residing 100% to any of them, even China, Russia, US also, and their allies. So that's my reading into this. But what do you think about the involvement other Arab countries, namely Jordan and Saudi Arabia?
I think they'll just play the same role as they always have been. They'll just mostly just pay lip service to the ongoing situation. They would call for some kind of restraint or mediation, or they would also, because they have their own issues to concern themselves with the Palestinians being forced closer to the border in Egypt, and Jordan itself having been quite gracious in accepting a lot of Palestinian refugees over the past 70 years. But I think they would continue playing the role as they have always been for the past 20 years, which is why when you bring up the involvement of the other powers here, I think it's very interesting. When America is going to be involved, you'd be very sure that Russia would find a way to get in on that. Like you said, they would double down on whatever America would be attempting to do here. But then again, you have Putin saying that Iran's attack here is not exactly something that would need a lot of restraint, calling for Iran to exercise more restraint in here, because I think in a way, or the Kremlin here does not want to see involvement of a former state in the area, because they've already been quite successful in embedding themselves into the non-state elements here. And it's how do you say, like if it comes to Iran here, we can talk about balance of power. I think it is going to shift eventually, because just recently, report from Washington. Now, you can always doubt the credibility of this, because I feel it would just serve an agenda, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, saying that Iran is nearing nuclear capability. Its capabilities of nuclear weapons is almost coming to fruition, and that would definitely tip the balance over to Iran and being able to, how do you say, throw its weight around in the region, which I believe Israel itself would be very, very paranoid about. But you see here is that now, if what is going on here, it's somehow involving Russia formally, with Russia needing to actually make formal statements or even formal engagements with Iran officials. And this is quite ironic as well, because you have the Ukrainian President Zelensky accusing Russia of being involved in this attack, like somehow making the insinuation that Russia or Putin is egging the Iranian government to actually commit these attacks. So it's going to add even more, like it's in a way, one thing happens, it's going to stir up controversy in another part of or another region which is full of conflict, and you're going to have a lot of, like I mentioned, the international community becoming more and more involved here. But I think Iran, right? They have a lot of their own security issues that they also need to deal with. Now that even though Afghanistan is quite, how do you say, Afghanistan is uh, somewhat under a former government, they still have the emergence of the re-emergence of ISIS elements in Afghanistan, and not just in Afghanistan, but you have also in Africa, or you might see a resurgence of ISIS elements in the Middle East, and you might make the argument that this is America redoubling down as a way to, how do you say, box Iran back in, to focus more on their own internal security issues and their border security issues, rather than chasing after a much more larger goal here, larger objective, which is to harangue Israel for what is going on. But of course, Israel, I think Iran here, it's very timely as well for them to launch such an attack, because now we've seen the international community, or even not just Muslims all over the world, but citizens all across the world, condemning Israel for the atrocities that they are committing, and justly so. And this would give a lot of leverage, a lot of justification for Iran to do what it needs to do without much public backlash. They can always say that this is not just retaliation for what happened in Damascus, but the ongoing humanitarian atrocities happening in the West Bank and in Gaza. And I already seen like a lot of course, there are the alarmists saying that this could trigger not just a regional war, but a world war. But you can also see a lot of the, how do you say, pro Palestinian individuals here who have suddenly shifted to becoming very pro war here, taking a very pro war stance, saying that Iran should have nuked the entire place, should have nuked the whole country to the ground. And that is why I need to keep going back to the idea that this is an escalation of tensions in the region. If Iran can double down on these kinds of optics, right, without much accountability from its allies in China or in Russia, keeping them in check, then I think they would feel very emboldened to continue acts of aggression, not just through the proxies that they have, but maybe more of the formal steps to declaring an armed conflict. But then again, this is a logistical issue here in trying to claim Israel, because Iran has to cross through the Tigris and the Euphrates and the whole desert that's between Iran, Iraq, and Israel here, and doing any kind of formal military intervention, a formal military war, the conflict would be very costly for Iran just because of logistical nightmares. But now, I think with the fact that they've launched the Shahed missiles, the ballistic missiles, and the drones, it kind of not just like you said, testing the Iron Dome's capabilities. Anytime the Iron Dome gets attacked, it gives more insight for people who want to find a way to breach it, the data that they need to overwhelm or even dupe the entire system. Now we've seen like how Hamas was able to perform to breach Israeli security, which was supposed to be touted as the best in the world, with just parachutes and just dropping down from parachutes. You know, it's the whole idea that, you know, it's amazing how Hamas was able to infiltrate Israel, planning the whole thing from a cave with just a box of scraps, right? So it's also going to be testing the arms race as well. Israel, I think, would find a way to increase its capacities and capabilities in missile interception systems here, which I think they would be very much get a heads up. They would get a leg ahead in the game here, because Israel obviously is funded by the American government, but they also have a very easy way to innovate their military technology. That they've broken down the barriers between the military and the civilian government, and this allows for easier movement between the military and businesses to innovate the technologies that they have, which usually is adapted for military use first before it's ever trickled down for commercial uses. So there's a lot of things that could happen from just this one event here, a lot of speculation to be had. But this is how far I would go into it.
Adi, before we end this topic, my biggest concern is that Israel or Netanyahu, for example, especially, uh, will distract all of us from the real narrative that's happening in Gaza. So with this new attack from Iran, again, Israel going to play victim. I think they're going to redirect the narrative, this war narrative, that they're also suffering from all of this, and sees Iran as the perpetrator now that wants to destroy Israel at once. Even rightly after Iran attack today, they also keep bombing Gaza, and I think 15 or 19 people were killed. So it shows no. I don't know if the word remorse is even in their dictionary, but shown when the same day they were attacked by Iran, and they're also attacking even more in Gaza, killing civilians, all these innocents' life. So I think whatever happening, regional war or whatever that's other things, conflicts that keep happening surrounding the Gaza war, I think we should not stop talking about free Palestine and how Gaza still suffering with needing a lot of aids and a lot of, like you said, like it needs ceasefire. And Netanyahu we cannot just let Netanyahu get away with this. So any narrative should be rerouted back to how Israel bulldozed their way, and genocide is the right word to describe what's happening in Gaza. No other words
Yeah,
is suitable for it. And the argument of Israel has a right to defend itself has its limitation. Like if you throw me with a stone, I can just like throw with you with stone or even scratch you, not just kill my entire family and burn my house. So that's crossed the line, and that line has been crossed way back in I don't know, in December or November. So with that, do you have any last word for this Iran
yeah. I
and
mean,
Israel?
I completely agree. It's what's happening will definitely be used to fuel whatever narrative there's already present. But we have to remember that when the elephants go to war, the grass always suffers. And like I said, I keep saying escalation that's happening in the region. And if this escalates to a point where rationality gets overridden, then it would be, how do you say, whatever efforts that were taken to ensure a ceasefire would be wasted. And who would suffer in the end? It's not the leaders who are making their decisions from their comfy offices. It's going to be the people who are suffering every day. Right now in Palestine, you could see long lines, queues, basically up to 6 or 7 hours of people who are just trying to get their daily bread, which is it's very astonishing to see that even now there is no, how do you say, from the leaders themselves, like those who are very much involved, like the US, the Israelis, even Russia, taking a very, how do you say, decisive stand on it. We've only seen countries who, even though their voices are heard, can they really make that much of a difference? So it's the responsibility and accountability of the regional powers here to be more responsible, because at the end of the day, the people on the ground, the Palestinians in Gaza, are going to suffer whatever decision that's going to be made. So it's not about flexing regional power hegemony anymore. It's, if you really matter as a humanitarian concern, then more effort should be diverted to that. And that's just for me.
Yeah, just to reiterate, Biden, no more escalation of war in Middle East right now, please. So with that, we conclude the topic Iran and Israel attack. Coming up next, we're going to talk another geopolitics topic, but this involving US as well, but another two Asian country, which is one of them is our direct neighbor, coming right up.